Welcome to Nourishing the Mother, where inspired women talk about the journey of motherhood through the common thread of parenting, relationship, and sexuality as a path to consciousness. We ask, in what ways can we show up more fully, live more meaningfully, parent more wholly, and love more unconditionally? How can we mine the wisdom from the experiences of our lives and expand into those challenges? If you are here, you care about paving a path of conscious and intentional motherhood, connected with yourself and your gifts, and also illuminating your children in theirs, so we may raise more whole humans who can impact this world in a more humane way. And if you feel like giving a little back to this free content, please become a patron of the show and receive extra member benefits for less than a coffee a month. Or you can leave a review on iTunes and Facebook, all of which helps the podcast keep going and reach more mamas who need this type of tonic for the soul. Head on over to patreon.com/NTM podcast to find out more. We are Julie Tenner and Bridget Wood, and we are so grateful you're here.
Hello and welcome to Nourishing the Mother. I am Julie Tenner, and I hope Bridget Wood is joining us, but in this world of, the ether and the internet, let's hope she makes it here. So if not, though, I want you to know that we are joined today by the beautiful Jill from Born Wise. And if you caught our Facebook Live with her or you're in Soul Driven Motherhood, you'll know exactly who she is. So we have brought her onto the podcast to have just a really mum-to-mum conversation around what her journey with 3 children has been of homeschooling and the difference between homeschool and school at home, which I was largely unaware of that difference up until probably this last week. And it's brought up an enormous amount of conflict internally within me and many questions that I didn't know I actually even had. So that's why we really wanted to have this conversation really as medicine for Bridget and I. And we also know that if it's happening for us, it's likely happening for our listeners too. So Jill, just want to say hi. And then I just want to talk about our podcast sponsor. And then I'm going to chat to you. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Hello, everyone.
So our podcast is sponsored by Space Maker Wardrobes. So spacemakerwardrobes.com.au. They are a DIY flat pack design for any space that you have with mirrored doors. So if you're in our Seek More group, you can see I'm sitting in a bedroom that has now a beautiful mirrored wardrobe right behind it, and it has been phenomenal in the setup of organisation, which this is, if you ever had a time in your life where you're ready to clear the clutter and really make way for the next version of you and your family, then I absolutely believe that Space Maker Wardrobes will be able to help you, because it's a beautiful family-run company and all Australian-made. So please check them out. They do have a 10% Nourishing the Mother discount code, which we will have in our show notes and also on the socials. So if you're ready to organise your space, spacemakerwardrobes.com.au. So, Jill, for our lovely listeners that either missed your live or missed you in your soul-driven motherhood lesson on leaf love, which Bridget and I were just like heart-swooningly like, oh my God, I love it so much, I think I need to be in her classroom. Would you like to give everyone a little wrap of who you are, how Born Wise came to be, and what you really want to bring to the conversation?
Yeah, of course. Well, obviously I'm Jill, and where do I even start? Yeah, so I started.
I know, it's a big question.
There's a bit of a story, I guess, as there always is, but I started Born Wise just after the birth of my 3rd son. So that was, and I started it as the Little Yoga School, so that's what it used to be known as. And that sort of came about after I actually quit teaching. I was pregnant with my 3rd, and I was probably quite stressed trying to balance being a classroom teacher and a mum to 2 boys who were about to become 3 boys. And I just felt overwhelmed and just thought, it's not right for me anymore, even though I was working at a beautiful school and I was writing more with their philosophy as well. But from a personal point of view, it was too much. And so I decided to quit teaching, just focus on, being a mum again to my third little boy who was on the way. And I think it was just, one of those things in the middle of the night, 3 months in after quitting teaching, that I just woke up. Like, you have all those awesome ideas and bursts of creativity when you're pregnant and breastfeeding. And it was born out of that, where I just suddenly saw this opportunity to take teaching outside of the classroom and to kind of think, well, how would I look as a teacher outside of the classroom? And it was literally a 3 a.m. kind of idea of, teaching doesn't have to be bound by these walls of a school and a classroom. And I just kind of then went from there. So just following my gut, and I made a little bit of a promise to myself to use that time to just be guided a little bit more by my heart and intuition, because even though education and teaching is made up of a lot of females, there's a lot of female teachers out there, if you were looking at statistics, it's bound by very masculine structures, and I found that difficult to be a mother and a teacher and a female in that environment. And I just wanted to see how it looked, applying a little bit more of a feminine flow to that. So it was just like it's creating a space for me to explore my deep beliefs and passions and ideas about teaching and natural learning and all of the things that I was suspecting that I needed to make a space for them to kind of take their own journey, if that makes sense. So
Bridget came up with this beautiful question yesterday that I just wanted to ask you as well, is when you started your homeschooling version, so this is you now with your 3 a.m. epiphany, which I think is when we do our best work anyway. I have a notebook next to my bed for that very reason, because you always think, that's so good, I'm going to remember it in the morning, and if you don't write it down, it's gone. Yeah, that's exactly right.
I feel it.
How has what you thought it was going to be where you started, has it been different to your journey so many years on to what it actually is as homeschooling for you?
I think I had a pretty decent idea of that I needed to let go of a lot of things and my expectations about school and learning. And I think because of the way I did it, I actually went down that path of calling, in the name, the little yoga school. So I was, one of my little catchphrases for myself back then was to create conscious education. So I wasn't ever thinking about the classroom, if that makes sense. I was focusing on other areas. So I kind of was expecting it to look different, if that makes sense.
Well, what does conscious education mean to you? What did that mean to you?
I think because I was inspired by a lot of, we use the word conscious a lot now, I know, but, conscious pregnancy, conscious parenting, it's a thing. And, there's Bridget.
Hi, Bridget.
Hello.
How are you going? Maybe she can't hear us just yet. Bridget will be joining us soon. Hi.
Hi.
So, oh my God.
It's okay. It's okay. It's ISO. You've been sick. I don't want to hear an apology of any sort.
If I could tell you the story of my... Okay, honey, I'm just on a podcast. Can you hop out, please, honey? Thank you. I seriously had a dream. I just went to... Can I give you 2 seconds of my story? Just so I just jumped on the podcast. So, stayed up till last night, super late. Got up this morning, had a nap with my baby. I thought I got ages. 2:00. Yep, podcast. Can't wait. So excited. Went to bed with Finding My Element next to me, Sir Ken Robertson's book, because I had this inspired post that I was going to write. My dream was Julie basically telling me that she's just sick of me not stepping up anymore and that I just need to step up.
What?
And then woke up.
You wake up to my phone messages.
Well,
where are you?
then I woke up and thought that was a really weird dream. Obviously, this is interweaving with my schooled beliefs and my not good enough stuff. And then I'm like, no, I feel like we're in fair exchange and I feel like I'm showing up. I think we're good. And then I checked my phone.
So that's so intuitive. So even in deep sleep, you're totally on the wavelength of, oh, I've got to be somewhere. Like, that's actually freaking amazing.
Well, obviously, I knew in my sleep I needed to be somewhere, but it wasn't quite enough to wake me up. So here I am.
That you had a place. No, I love it. I love the whole thing. We really only just done, I mean, you know, Jill and I could speak all day, which we've had a lovely big conversation that we just jumped on. So we've just started with our intro and Jill's beginning story, and she started talking about that she entered the homeschooling journey, or her, you know, leaving the classroom version of teaching with the concept or ideal that she wanted to do conscious schooling. So I was just exploring what conscious education meant or was for her. So that's the wrap up. That's where we're up to.
Thank you so much for giving that wrap up to me and to all those listeners again who just heard that again. So thank you. And thank you, Jill, for your patience. And for
no worries. No worries. It's nice to see you. And that was an amazing wrap up, Julie. Like, you're really good at bringing it.
So conscious education, Jill, take us back. What does that mean for you?
Well, I guess I was inspired by, I mean, I know that the fact that the word's used a lot lately, and we kind of, you know, conscious parenting, conscious pregnancy, I think conscious dreaming, everything, you know, is conscious or trying to be. And I just wanted to apply some of those principles to education, because I could draw so many parallels. Like, all of this stuff I was reading in conscious parenting books and listening to podcasts, like what, you know, your guys' work. And it just kept relating back to education, like over and over and over again. So I just thought, and that's why I called it creating conscious education, because I wasn't sure what it was going to look like. So the creating aspect of it was, well, let's just admit this is a journey and I don't know exactly how it's going to look. But the more I dug into that, you know, it's all about my conditioning about schooling and education and learning. And, you know, what I'm loving at the moment is I keep hearing, I had a chat with a mother yesterday, and I read it in your post, Bridget, I think you did one yesterday. There's this intrinsic knowing inside mothers of how to teach our children. Like, we actually do know it and we get it and it makes sense. And you read books like Ken Robinson's The Element and you're like, I know this stuff. I know this deep within my being, but there's this massive amount of conditioning that we've been kind of programmed via our own schooling. So it's like two opposites sometimes for me.
You talked to us in our other interview that we did with you on our Facebook page, and you mentioned that you had to go through a deschooling process in order to pull your boys out of school. Can you share a little bit about what a deschooling process looks like? Because I think that there will be parents, even in this school at home journey, who are going through an aspect of that at the moment as they realise some of those deep-seated beliefs that they have.
Yeah, sure. Well, it's like, I think they usually use that term more for kids. You know, they say if you take your child out of school, there's a deschooling process, and there's actually even a number given to it, and I can't remember what that is, but it's something like a month for every year they were in schooling. So, you know, my middle son had been in for a while, so the advice given to me was, well, yeah, take a month for every year he's been in, and you do nothing for that time. Like, you literally have to do all this unraveling. And I was doing that with him. And then I had this kind of burst in, you know, like idea coming to me or realization, that it's not really about his deschooling. It's so much about me, because he quickly dropped into this new space. Like, for him, you know, he was very happy and I could see him thriving, and it was myself who was struggling. And this was even after, you know, my philosophy being so deeply connected to conscious education and natural learning. And I just thought, wow, there's so much of the teacher, like classroom teacher in me that still thinks, well, if we're not sitting at a table and writing it all down, how is this learning? You know, and I knew that didn't make sense. But these belief systems are so strong. So that deschooling process, I don't know if it's commonly applied to the parent, but it's like a whole family process for me. Like, the children have had less conditioning, so it makes sense that it would take longer for us to deschool. And I guess,
just want to say, no, sorry, I was just going to say also this whole concept, like, I know, Bridget, you have always been far more well-read and versed in education and brain development and alternatives to education. And I thought I got that until this ISO experience. And I've realized over the course of the last 2 or 3 weeks, all of these missing pieces of information that I had, I thought I knew, and it turns out I really didn't know. And that homeschooling, I still thought was the same thing as school at home, like ultimately kind of the same thing. And I'm a pretty structured, love order and, drive person. I was like, well, that, the school system would fit for me, but just at home. And so why would I choose to do that? Because the school can do what I can do and then I don't have to do it. So it seems like a really good fit. Until what I've noticed is, when we quit school, 8 days before everyone else chose or were forced into isolation, I designed my own homeschool program with my kids. And I thought it was going to be the same thing as school. And I fucking loved it. Everyone was in this love bomb. I was ridiculously inspired. You think, how do you have time to do work? And I was it was effortless because I was everything was just felt so fucking
fun.
If I was on ecstasy and cloud 9 or something, I might as well have taken the happy pill. It was ridiculous. It was ridiculous. And I thought, I love ISO. This has been the best gift in the whole world for me. So I assumed that it would continue to be that once online virtual school kicked in. And it has been the biggest shock to my system to realize it's the total opposite. So I thought I was a representation of the system and that's why it worked so well. But what I've realized is actually I'm completely different to the system. And I had this huge meeting with my daughter's teachers and they're so beautiful. And they're they are not the system. And these teachers love the teachers that I have met love what they do. They are inspired by education. They love the children in their classroom. There is no question in my mind. But they're still in a system where we write and we do a worksheet on literacy, we do this on maths, and then we move to RE, and then we move to inquiry, and then we move to phys ed. And it's none of it kind of cohesively pulls together into any one meaningful thing. So then it's a shit fight trying to do this thing or this thing or this thing, because none of it really has this context of deeply meaningful, inspired learning. The only reason my child wanted to do it was so she could write to her teachers and she could wait with bated breath for the feedback and the validation that she would get back from them. It wasn't the work.
Yeah.
So here she is in a system also where I went, holy shit, this is about punishment and reward now. Yeah. So you're doing something because you want the reward of external validation and we're training you for that.
Mm.
Or I say, well, I wouldn't say fuck it to her, but fuck it off. Who cares? We just won't do it. And then she's terrified of the consequences of not doing the thing that she's supposed to do that's on her work list from her teachers. So it's this swing.
And this is when they're little. This is at 7. And so if this gets ingrained at 7, what's it like when you're 15 or 35? Or, this is my thing as well. Because
I know.
Because my son was ruling up his margins and he got upset because his margin wasn't perfect and he said, my teacher will be angry. And so he's ripped out the pages. I'm thinking, oh my God,
Yeah, I do.
That's amazing.
No, I do. And so I was saying to the teachers, Nick and I are having this conversation. She has a team teaching situation with these 2 teachers. And I'm trying so hard to explain. And they're on the other end going, well, things shouldn't be taking that long. And she's only supposed to have this much time for each one of these activities. So she hasn't done it in that time and you just don't do it and you move on. And I'm like, well, that sounds great. But the minute I say to her, well, that's it, we're not finishing, off we go, I internally have a conflict with that because it is completely opposite to the way that I believe our neurobiology is designed to work, to function, to be in focus, to be immersed, to be creative, to fully experience life and play and everything you need to learn out of that thing, to short circuit it and go, you have to stop working now on that thing that you were into. I was like, it seems like ridiculous. And yet you're asking me to do that with her for everything, because there's so much to get through in the day and none of it which has any level of cohesiveness. Anyway, so we had this huge conversation. I was like, oh my God, I don't know if I want to be in the system. And I literally said to her teachers, I just don't know that the system is for her. And the teacher's response to that was, well, we just think school at home isn't for her because we see a different child at school in the system. And I went, oh, that's interesting to me. So I had this sort of dichotomy in my head around, you know, how you were saying, Bridget, in one of the interviews that you did, where you're saying there's something about the going to school that creates the structure in which there's a level of expectation which kind of facilitates potentially an easier version of learning. Whereas at home, trying to do that, there's the dynamics of parents, the different environment, it's a different setup. Maybe she's totally tapping into my internal conflict about, do I want to stay here? I don't know, you know, and the whole thing's just not working like at all. So her beautiful teachers have said, we will design a scaled down different version for Lola if you'll commit to it, Julie. So they can already see this, like, it's not worth our time if you're not actually going to do it. And I totally get it. And so, you know, Nick and I sat there and went, okay, could we say that we will follow your schedule for 2 weeks and we'll give it a go? But if she's having a really hard day, so Julie will move to a different style of learning and I will work on incorporating your curriculum into it. And that was like mind-blowing for them. But you're not teaching her learning goals or the curriculum. No, I am, but it will look like something she's interested in, and I'll still get her to write you 5 words and I'll still get her to explore that, but it's going to look like something she's interested in. And one of our other teachers also lit up and she went, oh, that sounds like project-based learning. And she loves project-based learning. She said to me, yeah, I get it. But we can't do that here. There's too many people that don't like it and a system that it doesn't work in, and there's too many complaints, and it's not something that we can do. And I was like, fuck. So I totally ran sort of screaming into all this stuff that in my head I thought I had categorized and organized, and I was good with it. And all of a sudden I find myself in this. But learning could look like the happy pill time.
Yeah.
Why does it have to look like this? And do I want it to? And if I say yes to it, what the heck does that mean? You know, like it's just like opened up this whole thing, and I just feel totally like you just on unstable ground of I don't even know what I want to do here now that I know this.
Yeah.
That's my rant. What do you think about this?
I love it and I relate, and it does feel like it is that sense of having the like carpet ripped out from under you, and even reflecting on your own experience where, you know, I always said that I had a good experience at school. I always said, yeah, it was a good experience. But then I had worked with a mentor a few years ago, and he said I was well behaved. He used that term, and I saw it. I felt like that little, yeah, I am well behaved, you know, like gold star for me. Like I had that moment with it. And then I was reflecting on it when I was driving home, and I was like, no, there's something about his tone of voice that wasn't a compliment. Like it wasn't either, you know, he wasn't trying to insult, but it was an observation. And I thought, well, yeah, I learnt pretty young and early on to be well behaved in the classroom, because I could see the kids who weren't being well behaved and it wasn't looking good for them, you know. So I think I chose, well, I'm just going to get on board with this. It didn't really make much sense. So to have that moment, you know, like years and years later, thinking, I've always said I've had a good experience at school, and then looking into it and thinking, no, I just learned to be a people pleaser. Like I just learned to look outward for validation, and that was hugely confronting, because then all of a sudden it made me see it happening to my kids where I wasn't even really seeing it happening. And yeah, so it leaves you in this space of kind of just feeling like, the carpet's been taken out from underneath you, because you're then going, well, what do I do with this newfound information? Do I want to know it, or do I want to, is ignorance bliss? You know, do I want to go back to not even thinking about it?
That's exactly where I am.
Damn it. Damn the truth.
Yeah. It's frustrating.
Where are you at? Where are you at with it, Bridgie? Where are you sitting with it?
I'm still really conflicted, because it's that thing, like what you're hinting at, Gillian. It's like, oh, like, I get that, like, you know, I see that that this is what it's turning out in my child, and it's like I had a conversation with this prep teacher last year about their behaviour management, and it was very rewards based, and he's like, oh, you know, but it works. And I said, yeah, like, but at what cost? Because what are our goals here? Because if I want to raise a whole child who, you know, can see and appreciate all parts of themselves, and they're being trained to be rewarded out of what you see as challenging behavior, and that's minimized in them, and they don't learn to understand what that feedback is, you know, what's the cost of that? And so that's what I keep running into again when I see him, you know, tear out pages, or when I see him say to him, oh, I'm dumb at reading, like, I'm the slowest in the class at this, I'm not good at it. You know, and so already there's this internalized competition, or this internalized, you know, sense of where he measures up against other people, instead of just focusing on what can I learn today, or, you know, just being well, not even thinking about something as learning, just being inspired by life and being exposed to new things. And, you know, it's so early, the grading and the measurement happens, and the tokens happen for, you know, and it seems innocuous, but it's not at all. Like, you know, and all compassion to classroom teachers, because like, my mum's a teacher, so I'm also super schooled because my mum's a teacher, right? So she gets offended when my son doesn't want to do his work, like, which is what happened the other day. Like, it was a big bust up because she took it personally that he was playing up. Like, whereas I'm seeing all these other things going on. And so where do I sit? I still sit in the same spot I sat, you know, like, since he's entered education. But for me, and I would love to hear your perspective on this, Gillian, is I worry about my capacity to maintain what I see as a strong level of internal drive to be the responsible person for my child's education. And that's where I wonder, like, could I do that? And what have you had to face within yourself, or what beliefs have you had to navigate or unpack for yourself around the taking on board that responsibility? Like, at what point for you was the pain or what you're witnessing in your children great enough to tip you into the place of therefore taking over that responsibility to educate?
Yeah, I mean, I relate so much to everything you're saying, and I sat in that space as well, and I'm still in that space. I think for my middle son, he's the one who really kind of pushed me into it. You know, I was thinking for my younger son, I was like so ready to homeschool him, and I was thinking I had this time to build up to it because he's only 2.5. But my middle son he literally walked into the classroom one day, or into the school grounds, and then turned around and came out in tears. And I was like, oh, what's wrong? Did something happen? And he said, nothing happened, nothing bad happens at school. I just don't want to be here. And you had that heartbreaking moment. And we literally, we were walking to school that day, and I had no idea what we were going to do. So we just turned the pram around and walked off. And I kind of thought, oh my God, like all of my ideas and philosophies, I'm just going to have to step into them. So it was kind of like, just
that sounds so courageous, because I've had a lot of times with my son, and I wonder how much of it's me and how much of it's him, where he's, I've had to like coax him into the classroom crying because he doesn't want to be there, doesn't want to go. And then I kind of get frustrated and angry at the situation, because I don't know how much of it's him and how much of it's me, and how much is he waking me up to my truth, and how much is it me trying to get over this and own this, schooling choice 100%, I imagine for you there's also that process of the mirror in it too.
Massively. And I think as well, not making long-term decisions. So, I feel like, Julie and I spoke briefly before, it's like maybe they'll go to school next year, maybe if they make that choice, they're 10 and 12, or we might find some cool other programs that exist, and things are starting to exist. So Hugo, middle son, he's doing a homeschooling program with an amazing teacher who's like me. He's left the classroom and doing her own thing for homeschoolers, and he loves that. And I just see that as that little bit of balance, because he needs time away from me and his brothers as well. Like, they need to know who they are beyond the classroom and that social, the fact we learn through our peers, and he thrives in that environment. For me, comparing it to what he was doing in the school system, where I saw him in the assembly, not long before he came out of school, and I saw him on stage and I thought, I don't even know who that kid is. Like, he just looks like he has no idea why he's on stage. He has no idea what he's supposed to be singing, and you could tell he's just going through the motions with it. And I just, for me, it became then about well-being, because I thought, if he's anxious, he's not going to learn anyway, so let's just give it a shot. And I think taking down some of the kind of long-term, what could this mean long-term, just going day to day, let's just do this day to day, and if we go back into the system at some point, we do. That helped me a lot, because it kind of just took the pressure off, and but it's a very day by day kind of exploration with it as well, and a lot of experimentation. But my neighbours said, and we don't know them very well, they said, what are you doing differently with Hugo? Because, we've seen in the last 2 years, in the mornings he looks so sad, and he's not sad anymore. And I thought, oh my gosh, it was really painful to hear that from someone who's a bit of an outsider to our family as well, because I thought, wow, do our neighbours know? And I hadn't seen it. But I think I had seen it. It took me a while to come to the table. It took me a while to get there. And, and seeing other people, meeting other homeschooling families, that helped immensely, because I could see these kids just doing stuff that was just amazing. Yeah.
So in terms of not planning long term, how does that fit in terms of, because being a homeschooler, you still have to be registered, and I don't know how it works, so please fill me in. And I understand Victoria has by far the strictest version of documentation and requirements than other regions. I've heard of particularly families that, take off for a year around Australia, that they will choose to register with, say, New South Wales instead of Victoria, simply because...
I thought it was the opposite, actually. I thought it was the opposite.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I thought Victoria was the easiest. Or maybe not. Jill, do you know?
I have no idea. I know the states differ quite a lot, so that kind of makes it confusing. I'm not sure how WA compares.
That aside, what does that look like? Because in my head I go, okay, so what I'd have to do is look at, essentially, does that pack, or I don't know what it is, give you a set of outcomes that they want to see by the end of that 12-month period? Or how do you know, if you're going day by day, that you're actually giving them the level of education that they need? Well, I guess I've got several questions. What does that look like in terms of the whoever it is that you're responsible to? How do you know that you're filling in all of the blanks of education? Because I still do go, there's stuff that, and yes, I could find the expert and the person who could fill in algebra because I don't want to do it, or whatever. But when I look at particularly what my kids are doing in high school, it is primary school. Honestly, I feel like that's pretty easy. I've been immersed in this culture and community since my kids were tiny, since Heath was at least one. So that's 13 years ago. So the whole concept of primary school teaching doesn't bother me at all. I feel pretty effortless with that. By the time I get to grade 6, I've had to have done it already. I know what they need to know by then. Sounds amazing. Sign me up.
Yeah.
But high school does feel like a completely different kettle of fish, because I see what my kids do at high school, and it is a completely different system to primary school. And what they're exposed to, and given that teachers all of a sudden, there's not one teacher who has to teach an entire curriculum, but there's teachers who specialise in each part of the curriculum, I go, fuck, I don't know if I could measure up to that. I know I've just hit you up with a lot, but what do you think about all of that?
Yeah, no, I get it, because I felt the same with my eldest in high school. I felt early childhood years, I felt really comfortable with. Primary years, I was like, yeah, I get that. High school as well, I was a bit, oh man, that, what does that really mean, and how does that look? But I think because the world's changing, with technology and everything, it's literally, this is probably going to sound like a cop-out, but some of the stuff I've literally Googled, how, he's got to learn about blah, 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 whatever's in the curriculum. I think animal adaptations or something. I always say that word wrong, but it was something. So I literally Googled like a year 7 class for it, looked at it. So this is me really just trying to figure out, like, I'm sure there's a more efficient way of doing it. And looking, okay, what was the lesson plan? What did they actually want to teach? Like, what bit was actually the curriculum content, and how would we deliver that? So I'm actually including him with that process, if that makes sense. So because I just know that anything is learning. And for me, what I want them to have most of all is that self-directed learning. So I just try to be really honest with him and say, I actually don't really know what this high school homeschooling looks like. Let's figure it out together. And he's quicker with it than me. And also there are so many online resources for the curriculum as well, that if you were worried about that, you can look into it. But some of the curriculum is so general.
So can I just take you back to that? So what is the pack or the curriculum or the whatever thing that you have to do with the government? What is that? What does that look like? What do you get?
So
blah, blah, blah.
The Australian curriculum, so the Australian national curriculum. So there's just like you just can Google it and look through it and kind of follow along with it and just tick the boxes.
Sorry, they're cutting in and out a bit.
Oh, sorry.
But even with that, like, it's even, I think, even in Victoria, I think you can still choose if you use the curriculum or not, can't you? Like,
yeah, you can. You can look at, like, actually different states have, I'm not sure now what WA's kind of policy on unschooling is. I think in the past it was if you can prove that they're progressing. So if when you have a moderator, if you've chosen to, homeschool and be registered and all that sort of stuff. So when the moderator comes out, you can talk your philosophy with them. And if you say, well, look, we have a natural learning philosophy in this household, they're more just looking to see that you actually are exploring some sort of learning, which obviously you can argue anything is, but there's some really simple things I guess I know of because of teaching background, like keeping a journal. I keep a journal of, well, what did we do today? And I get them to write it. And it doesn't have to be neat and organised. Like, it doesn't have to be, even as a classroom teacher, for me, my documentation was the messiest, scrappiest file of post notes and just random stuff. But it counts. It's more than just they want to see that someone is tracking this learning and kind of making sure there's progress. I think that's what, like, the big thing is that they look for. But I'm starting to find the high school curriculum actually a little bit easier to follow than the primary one, because it is like, when you're doing maths, you can just look at it and go, okay, what is it that they want him to be learning in this class? And there are so many online resources that we've kind of been looking at, all these different online teachings and even like Khan Academy and things which they sometimes like to use, sometimes don't. But it's good for me because even if he doesn't want to get on and do a Khan Academy lesson, I just look through and go, okay, what is it that they kind of want him to know? And, so we do that stuff as well. Like, I do get them doing little programs that are provided online. But it's the fact that it's done so fast. So, I think that's one of the things is that if you've got 25 kids in the classroom and the teacher's trying to deliver the same maths content to 25 kids, whereas if it's just you delivering that content to your 1 or 2 children, it happens so much faster that sometimes you can almost think, was there any point in doing that? Did we actually need to? Like, sometimes his lessons that I do with him are over in 15 minutes. And then I'm kind of left standing there going, oh, well, what do we do now? Like it just, and for me, like English literature, I guess is a different example. To me, it's more that they just, he likes reading, so that kind of helps, because I think the best way to become, a great
writer is to read.
Yeah, like it's really, I know it sounds like I'm simplifying everything, but it is when I start breaking things down. My middle son, if he tries to do fractions in a workbook, he's got no idea, but he can cook and he can measure 3/4 of a cup, because if it's got a practical application, he gets it. Whereas my eldest son, more like me, we learn via books and listening, and so yeah, it's yeah.
Do you say? I've heard some people talk about obviously traditional schooling, you're at school for 5-6 hours, but homeschooling, you're often only technically schooling, I guess, for maybe 2 hours a day. Is that a common?
Yeah, totally. I think it's like for the early years, they say an hour a day to meet the school curriculum if you're following the curriculum.
That's unbelievable. It's blowing my mind.
I know. And then it gets slightly more.
But it makes so much sense because if you think about a school day, what else is admin? What else is behaviour management?
Right? Like, I feel like if you've ever sat in a kid's classroom, which I have with all 3 of my kids, like half of the lesson is on behaviour management.
Oh, my God. It can take sometimes 20 minutes to get everyone sitting on the mat. And I remember for me, before I left teaching, I taught a yoga class to some adults. I'd only ever taught children yoga. And I was so thrown by the fact that I sat down and everyone was looking at me. Like I didn't have to do any tricks to kind of like ring bells or like do all this stuff to get everyone on board. And I was like, oh my God, time's going to go really slowly if I don't have to, but that was so deeply ingrained in me. And it was full on part of my job was just get everyone on the mat and listening. And you kind of end up going against your philosophy because there's no other way. Like if you've got 20 4-year-olds and you're trying to run through some sight words or whatever with them, I reckon a lot of it does become about behaviour management. And it's hard because, like you said, there's so many teachers who have awesome ideas and are really inspiring. And
you really do, yeah.
But you're bound by so much stuff. And I used to think the time with the kids, whereas actually it was a minimal part of my job. And, I didn't become a teacher because I liked administration. I'm actually really bad at it. My paperwork filing system was a disaster. But felt like the kids were such a small amount of my work, and the rest of it was about filling out forms and sitting in long meetings and, just kind of smoke and mirrors was what it seemed to feel like. And for me...
Can I ask you a mum question? Do you ever get in that point where Bridget and I are sort of casting forwards and looking at an enormous amount of fear around, will I be able to? And can I actually really do it? Or long term, am I going to fuck them up? Like, am I going to leave these huge holes in their brains / education / way of understanding the world? Like, I'm not saying the education system has that nailed either by far, but it's a system that we're trained not to fear and simply trust.
Yeah.
So I get that. But as a mum, I'm still standing here going, I know that that's not perfect. I know I could apply all of these same fears to that system, which I don't because that's how I'm cultured. But do you ever look ahead and go, I don't know, are you ever scared or worried about, can you do it? Are you going to meet it all? What happens when you're scrambling and you don't know how to teach them, or will you find the thing that they need? Or like, do you do any of that?
I did heaps, but I'm not anymore. And I don't even really know when that happened, but like trust has managed to kick in. I guess seeing the change in the boys and seeing these random people like my neighbour comment on the change in the boys, and just kind of backing off a little bit myself as well and watching them, like that's been the biggest kind of confirmation of it. And I mean, they had a little marketing meeting. They've got this little skateboard project, business thing going, and they had a marketing meeting with a social media consultant. And I was just standing in the background going, oh my God, they're there with their pens and they're writing everything down and they're just kind of so inspired and motivated. And that gave me this huge kind of just surge of trust as well, because I thought, these are skills that maybe it took me so long to kind of, I don't know, learn some of these outside school things, and I can just see the benefits and I see it. But it's a huge process. Like that's math. I've been there where you guys are as well, just going, oh my God, am I just going to completely make them into people who are so outside of the system they never fit? And that was a huge fear, but it's just not. It's just starting to dissipate more and more when I can see the well-being for all of us, for me as well.
To me, it sounds like the parallels for me around this and birth, and like birthing in the system versus birthing outside the system, and what it feels like to have come from my third baby, I didn't touch the system. And which ended up being a free birth by accident. But that was a whole process of massive, like, lifting the veil, I suppose. Yeah. And what it sounds like for me, I don't know if you feel the same, Jules, is like you're on the other side of what Jules and I have done around birth, going, it's actually beautiful here.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of a relief. It's exactly like that. Like it's, you know, so many parallels into other things as well when you just start seeing things differently. And, it's kind of fascinating to me, I guess. And then I'm immersing myself in reading stuff, like reading education philosophy and talk, you know, even like the posts that I see you guys doing and the other mums I talk to, and just going, people know this, like people know it deeply inside of them. It's just getting back to it, I think. Yeah.
So we're going to do a wrap up. To connect with you, Jill, where do we find you? How do we connect?
I've got, so Facebook and Instagram at the moment are the main areas. I am slowly working on a website. But, yeah, Facebook, Born Wise School, and Instagram as Born Wise. So I you can message me there and find out about things. Yeah.
And we'll make sure we put all those links in our show notes as well. And to connect with you, Bridget?
SuburbanSandcastles.com. And you, Jules?
ThePleasureNutritionist.com.
Remember to nourish the woman to rock the family.
And we'll see you next week when we continue to peel back the layers on your mothering journey.
And if you want to support Nourishing the Mother and all the late nights, the early mornings, the blood, sweat and tears we pour into our art, then please go to patreon.com/NTM podcast and become our patron. As a patron, you're helping all of the cost of operating this podcast, the hosting, the editing, the transcription, helping all of that be completely covered, and joining a community who are all about honouring our journeys and continuing to open. The more support we have, the longer we can last. So become a patron. We'd love to have you. Go to patreon.com/NTM podcast. We literally couldn't do this without you. Thank you so much for listening, and please share this podcast with anyone you think it would be medicine for.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/TheWellnessCouch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives.
Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.